Did you know that a lot of people run to the internet or go to the internet to seek advice on critical things or things that we usually feel or talk about deep down, but are scared to actually say out loud because of how the society might see us? Hello, guys. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Unsaid, where we talk about things that we usually will not see on a normal day. So I recently saw a video on TikTok where a woman was asking a popular TikTok influencer on advice on how to, reinforce a training or to train her child because this child over time um, has been seen to be rebellious. So in her case, her story, she was like, this child over time has started stealing, has started being rebellious, disobeying, doing all sort of things that is uncalled for. And then she asked, while she, told this influencer how it's been for her, and then she went ahead to ask, well, how do I train this child? How do I change the behavior? How do I make this child to, turn around and change or have like a new lead? And this brings me to think or talk about things that we usually will not say or we usually will not really even admit in the society. Number one, a lot of parents do not know what they are doing when it comes to raising kids. A lot of parents do not know what they are doing when it comes to parenting. Number two, a lot of parents will gladly leave the internet to train their child or give them advice on how to train their child, forgetting that you're dealing with a different kind of child. That person's experience or that person's advice, I mean, from the internet might not really work for you because you're dealing with a different child, you're dealing with a different kind of scenario, right? And this is not me saying that you wouldn't get the right advice on the internet. This is not me saying that a well trained person in a field or in a child field or in a particular field where you're asking advice on, this is not me saying that they cannot give you the right answers. But often, oftentimes than not, usually see that the case or the scenario or the illustration they are pointing to you or the advice they're pointing to you might not really even work for you because you're dealing with a different child. You are dealing with a different child. And then thirdly, people do not really understand or prepare themselves for the requirement of the critical things or the critical aspects of our life. I'm talking relationship, I'm talking marriage, I'm talking career. There is a whole lot of advice on the internet when it comes to these things that I mentioned. I remember when it was a thing, you need to learn a tech skill, you need to, and then you forget that, oh, you probably, that's not your strength, right? That's really not your strength. And you could actually do well in other careers. But because this is what is trending, or this is what people say is, you know, the real thing or the big deal, venture into it. But this is not me trying to digress, so let me not digress. Now, a lot of people do not actually prepare themselves for these critical aspects of our life, and in this case, parenting, right? Because tell me why you're running to the internet to seek advice on how to reinforce or to train your child. It really doesn't even make sense to me. But yeah, and then she asked, while she, told this influencer how it's been for her, and then she went ahead to ask, well, how do I train this child? How do I change the behavior? How do I make this child to, turn around and change or have like a new lead? When it comes to parenting or raising kids, right? Back in school, I did child psychology, and when it comes to child psychology, anything you want to teach a child for it not to leave them, for them to, actually grow up and live by them, it's always taught in the formative years. And the formative years Um, these are, I'm talking like 0 to 7 years, right? And then late childhood, right? So whatever you teach them at this stage tends to stick and it becomes part of them. In the formative years, the mind is more plastic absorbent, the mind is impressionable, and at this stage, children don't just learn things, right? They live or internalize them. I'm talking about habits, I'm talking about values, I'm talking about emotional regulations. And that's why most times when children throw tantrums, which is normal, I'm always of the opinion that you call them to order. And there are sometimes that children are doing certain things and you're like, leave them alone. Or maybe somebody's trying to correct them. And like, leave them or leave him, leave her. She's still a child. She's this. I'm like, do you know what you're doing? Do you you know? But yeah, this is a stage in their lives where the things that they see you do actually stick. During these years, um the brain is, you know, forming its core neural pathways. Repetition turns behavior into identity, so the things they see you do, they do them, and before you know, it's something they begin to, you know, repeatedly do over and over again, and it, you know, somehow turns into their behavior and turns into their personality. And because these are the things that are formed in their early childhood, they oftentimes tend to not forget them. Children learn by observations. They see you do things, they do them. They learn by observations more than instructions. And that's why I'm always saying be careful what you do in front of children. Because you see them doing these things and you're like, how did this child, you know, how are they doing these things? They're so small. So they must have seen you do those things, or they must have seen somebody else, an adult, do those things, and that's why they're doing that. What they're exposed to at this early stage of growing up, it becomes normal to them. It becomes a usual. It becomes something they see as normal. Why? Because an adult in in whom they actually trust, or an adult in whom they actually, you know, imitate, is actually doing these things. And since you're doing it, then it must be right. It must be something right to do. So that's why most times I'm always thinking before you even get married, before you begin to, you know, have kids, who are you, right? What's your personality like? If you give birth to a child like you, would you like it? If you raise a child like you, would you be happy with it? In other words, when you teach your child empathy, you teach them confidence, you teach them discipline, you teach them emotional regulation, like I mentioned, you teach them honesty, you teach them whatsoever. It doesn't just become a rule or regulation to follow, it becomes part of them, right? When they sit quietly in their subconscious, it becomes something they actually, you know, naturally think about, right? And before logic comes in, I mean, during the teenage years or the adolescent years where they're able to question things, you realize that they already have an orientation. This woman mentioned, I think she said the child was around 9 to 10 years. So you see, it's almost late, it's almost difficult to actually teach that child at teach a child at that age to follow instructions because they will question you, right? And during adolescent stage, right, it's about absorption, it's more about resistance, it's more about questioning the things that they do, the things that you tell them. It's more about negotiation, right? If you live or you've been around teenagers, you see that they're very rebellious. They're trying to negotiate their way, you know, just so that they can have their way to do certain things. At the adolescent stage, teaching becomes more of an like a reorientation, right? It becomes more of correction, trying to direct them, trying to correct them, rather than implementing certain character in them. You're no longer laying foundation. If there's a cracked wall already, it's always difficult to mend them. It's always difficult to fix them at this stage. And that's why lesson learned or the things or the characters learned at the formative years, they stick longer. It requires less reinforcement later on in life, and it becomes instinctive responses. It becomes you see them in certain situations in life, they instinctively, react a certain way, right? Because they grew up learning certain characters, learning certain behaviors. And this is why in early childhood, environment, the home, the school, the caregiver, if you choose to have one, the media, the language you use in your home is very, very important. Small things actually matter. Small things are actually like very important when it comes to raising kids at the early years. And the intentionality you work with serves as the quiet architect that directs your child's behavior. It serves as the quiet architect that actually decide who your child become. It may not be 100%, but to a very large extent, to a very large percentage, it becomes um, an architect to how your child becomes or behaves or reacts to certain things later in life. So let's not overlook the early stage of raising kids so that we don't end up, coming back to the internet to seek advice, to ask strangers on how to actually train our own kids. So my question is, if you found yourself around parents, or you're a parent, or you've lived around people with kids, what are the things that you feel that we don't say enough? What are the issues that you have experienced when it comes to parenting that you think that we don't say enough, but it's really an issue? Put them in the comment section. And if you have other things you feel like we don't say enough in the society, also put them on the comment section. Thank you for joining me on the first episode of Unsaid. See you in the next episode. Bye.